the idea that time can be described as a perfectly smooth surface and then dealt with statistically is just a first pass with Greek idealism, and careful examination of nature shows it to be inadequate in the same way that perfect circles were inadequate for describing planetary motion.
You are therefore saying that conventional science does not have and cannot have, with its present course of investigation, and a proper understanding of time.
That's right, because it assumes that it is to be analyzed with statistics, and that flattens out and denies the difference among various times and types of time.
God, Terence, how long have you been working on this?
Oh, since 1971.
71?
Yes.
What is your... You told me that you're originally from Colorado, family and all that back in Colorado.
Right.
Then finally exile.
Well, essentially, yes. And I got myself to the University of California at Berkeley right at the time of the anti-war movement and all of that. It was like a kid in a cultural candy store. And studied philosophy, art history, and then went off to Asia. Basically to check out the hash dens and the gurus, and the hash was fine, but the gurus just wanted into my pocket. And so then I went to South America, and as I mentioned, that's where this shamanism thing just really grabbed me.
What part of South America, Terence?
Southern Colombia, the Putumayo River Basin. And, you know, it's the psychedelic plants that are so fascinating to me, because you mentioned repeatability. Here's a technology, a technique that lets you repeatedly and with relative safety journey into alien worlds filled with alien forms of intelligence. And it's the only thing I've found that does that. In other words, I've investigated flying saucers, crop circles, this and that. It doesn't turn me on. But
no, let me quickly stop you there and ask you about crop circles. Many people feel that they are fractal in nature, and if you're on the internet, I know you've seen photographs of some of the more amazing ones, Stonehenge, some of the rest of them. They do appear to be fractal. What is your thinking there?
Well, I was thinking, you know, I don't think it's been published in this country, but this wonderful book called Around in Circles by Jim Schnabel, to my mind, that blows the lid off the whole crop circle thing. You and I could spend a whole evening, Art, discussing the relationship of the media to the human psyche, to how people handle evidence, and because I really think the psychedelic community has evidence to give on these paranormal questions that has never been properly heard and evaluated, because the ordinary society's attitude toward people who use psychedelics is that they are automatically unreliable.
Yes, I know.
But I think we're not going to crack stuff like UFO abductions and that sort of thing unless we admit the psychedelic evidence. And if we do admit it, suddenly the whole thing begins to look very, very different.
All right, Terence, I don't reject it. And a lot of guests that I've had on who have been into the very same areas we're in right now, very politically correctly rejected out of hand. You don't need it to accomplish this. They say that you can do it within yourself. And I don't reject that thought either, but I would like to hear the case that you would present for psychedelics opening the doors that you're talking about, that in fact they do. Well, how would you make that case?
Well, I hear what you're saying is you're equating spiritual techniques like yoga and prayer and human intimacy and that sort of thing. I'm not sure there's a connection. I mean, it does help to be an ethical person to take psychedelics. But, for instance, the psychedelic that has fascinated me most over the years is DMT, dimethyltryptamine. Now, this is not a well-known substance.
No, it isn't. What is it?
Well, that's what it is, dimethyltryptamine. It occurs in a number of plant species throughout the world. It's utilized by native peoples. And in the pure form out of the laboratory, when you smoke this stuff, you find yourself inside the flying saucer that all these dazzled people are raving about. But you found yourself there by initiating an action on your own. In other words, repeatability. And after about 3 minutes of spending time with the self-transforming elf machines and their technologies, you're deposited back in your apartment pretty much none the worse for wear. Well, now let's give this stuff to the leading lights of the UFO community or anyone else who has an interest in unusual psychological or paranormal phenomena.
All right. Hold tight, Terence. We're at another break point. Stay
to the open.
Terence McKenna is my guest. What a totally interesting individual he is. You've got to sit by the radio, turn the volume up a little bit, put down your book or whatever else you're doing, and listen. Back now to the big island of Hawaii and a very unusual individual named Terence McKenna. Terence, I've got a question for you. Have you ever watched Star Trek?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes, good. You're familiar, then, with the Prime Directive.
Thou shalt not interfere is, I believe, the Prime Directive.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Now, what you are saying is so serious and is such a large revelation that is it not possible that you are, in a sense, doing what you're doing right now, violating the Prime Directive?
Well, you know, it's only been about 100 years since the news began to arrive in the lap of Western civilization that there were these psychoactive plants scattered around the world. The first one was the peyote cactus, and in 1888, mescaline was extracted from that. I think it's not without implication that right at our moment of greatest cultural crisis, when we're destroying the environment and uprooting the rainforests and so forth and so on, that out of those same rainforests comes a phenomenon which, if we will face it squarely, offers a severe challenge to our notion of how reality works and how the world is put together.
And what if we miss it? What if we burn down finally enough of the rainforest that that one plant that we could have used is destroyed?
Well, this may have already happened in the sense that there are many known cases of people collecting promising plants from only one known source and then returning a few months or years later to find the whole thing
gone,
paved over.
That's right. All right, tackle this one, Art. Very interesting. Terence describes a workable scenario. But my question with it is this. Is this a universal process or only a localized effect? I believe that one of the theories of modern physics describes that observations affect the process or thing being observed. Isn't it possible that the data, the random sticks in China, is somewhat skewed by what is being determined as to time? Hasn't everybody noticed the phenomenon of time being perceived to slow down depending on how frequently you, for example, look at the clock? Cooks have noticed the same effect with boiling water. The quickening may be happening because we notice certain events and then notice more of the same as time goes along. In other words, we cause the process to occur, at least from our point of view. Ed in Nashville. Is this a moment of deep thinking?
Yes, well, I am thinking. I think it's a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. I think we are contributing to it as we uncover it within ourselves.
Yes.
Something is calling us toward itself, and as we approach it, we become more like it. something is sculpting out of the primate body over a couple of million years an entirely different kind of creature. And as we go to meet this thing, which I call the transcendental mystery at the end of time, we are taking on more and more of its characteristics, its godlike power, its ability to span space and time.
Yes.
And when we finally do reach it, I imagine there will be a kind of effortless moment of merging and recognition.
Signposts along the way, life on Mars, maybe Europa, cloning.
The rise of the internet.